Very good. We'll move on. And the next speaker is Paul Richards, who's going to talk about trends in telematics and leasing for commercial vehicles and fleet management. Paul is the General Manager, Leasing and Telematics Division for Massar Solutions. Paul.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Well, when I had to think about what I was going to talk about today in terms of the future of trucking in the Middle East, because I happen to be in the business and also because it's something that I'm passionate about, the thing that I really wanted to talk about today is telematics and what telematics really mean. So I've entitled this Onboard Telematics and Trucks That Talk Back. Sometimes we don't want things to talk back to us, but now we can actually get our trucks to talk back to us through telematics. So I want to just touch on briefly today what telematics actually is and the relevance of this to the commercial world we find ourselves in at the moment. In 1994, it became legal for the satellite industry, the satellites that were employed by the US Army, to be used by you and me and any other citizen that had the capability of being able to connect to a satellite. The reason for being to establish a global positioning latitude or longitude, also known as a GPS, a global positioning satellite. Now, in 1994, the reason that GPS existed was to say, where is my truck? Because as operators, we often didn't know where our trucks were, and GPS gave us the possibility to be able to actually know where our trucks were. So what happened was we started using satellite technology. It was unbelievably expensive, and essentially what you ended up with was that was an early version of technology in terms of GPS tracking. You ended up looking for that, through that, and you found that it would take you approximately 30 minutes to identify one GPS point, and you would pay the equivalent of $10 for that one specific point. So in 1994, the question was, where is my truck? In what I like to call the connected fleet era, now we have a situation is, 20 years later, what can my truck tell me? And the reason that this has come about is because of the advent of fleet management, and because there is so much information now available on our trucks and buses and other commercial equipment that we can tap into remotely and obtain from that vehicle's computer. As an example, Volvo has 12 onboard computers on its new truck range. Fiat has something like, I think, 14 different computers in its trucks. Now, all this information that's on our trucks is available, and we can make our trucks talk to us. So, when I was showing you 20 years back, we were saying, where's my truck? Now we're saying, what can my truck tell me? I want to talk to our truck. And we don't want to make it a two-way conversation either. We want to be able to do things like shut the truck down remotely. We want to stop the truck from going across the border to Saudi if we don't know about it, or we don't want it to go across the border to Saudi. So, what can my truck tell me? Apart from location, there's a whole pile of things that our trucks can tell us. Location, speed, who's driving. Now that might sound simplistic. Well, I put so-and-so, gave so-and-so the keys and he was supposed to drive to Lyon. Do I know that so-and-so is actually still driving the truck? No. Fuel consumption, engine coolant temperature, this can all be monitored remotely. Oil pressure, engine load, harsh braking, door openings. Now door openings, I'm not just talking about driver door or passenger door, but also the load body of the truck or the trailer. And when it comes to refrigerator transport, which Summer touched on earlier, which I was pleased about, door openings are critical because if your fridge temperature starts dropping as a result of too many door openings, you're going to have a very unhappy customer when you get to the other side with a fridge full of rotten chicken. So chiller temperature we can monitor remotely. chiller on and off we can do. So as a matter of, so what's happened is we've got, from going to where's my truck, we've gone to a huge deluge of information that we can get off the truck. This is just one of 10 or whatever it is, 12 odd examples of the information stream that's available. But the trick is to say, okay, now my truck's talking to me, I'm talking back to it, but it's information overload. I've got, from having too little information, I've now got too much. What am I going to do with all this information? So, it's like before we had cell phones. And the best phone was a thing made of Bakelite with a landline. Now we've got information overload. It's the same situation now with what we call the onboard computer. We install onboard computers into our vehicles and we get up to 300 different reports, and we sit with information and wonder, this is marvelous, what am I supposed to actually do with it? So, translating vehicle telematics data, which is, all it is just remote viewing of the information that's going on real time in the truck. How do I translate that into something in terms of results which can impact on my running costs for my truck vehicle fleet? The first thing is utilization. And I'm going to go into this I'm going to go into these points, just 5 points. Utilization is how, where, who. Routing. Am I routing my truck in the right way? Am I going to too many customers or too little? My driver behavior. My driver behavior is one of the absolutely key areas for maintaining commercial truck operations and for making sure that we're getting the most benefit out of our commercial vehicles. And the whole thing boils down into a cost per kilometer. And the only way to do that is through control. So in terms of utilization, I've given you a quick screenshot there. That's the company I work for is Massar Solutions, and that's the type of dashboard that we now have that you can see remotely. So in terms of utilization, the type of information we should be asking of our onboard telematics, onboard computers is, do I have the right fleet size? If I've got all of the right controls in place, then my utilization will be what it should be. Now, utilization is not just the right fleet size, it's a mixture of downtime, fleet mix, is the truck economical, how old is the fleet? So, to make sure that your utilization is correct, you need all this information. And getting that information out of an onboard computer means you need to make sure that you're getting the right reports out and you understand the information that you're getting. Oops, what am I doing now? Sorry. Routing. Through being able to see graphically where our trucks are going via onboard computers, we can see if we're routing optimally. Are we going to the right places? Are our drivers following the correct routes? And are we maybe doing too many multi-drops in a particular area? Are the drivers actually following the correct routes? Or is there a better way of doing the things that we're doing in terms of routing? Too many drops, too many stops. Take for an example an FMCG frozen operator where somebody's got to stop in a busy part of Abu Dhabi or Dubai and carry 5 packets of frozen chicken up to the 20th floor of a building. Now, it doesn't make sense for him to have a helper or to leave the door of the truck open for 20 minutes while he goes up to the 20th floor, during which time his temperature of the freezer goes from -18 to +18 and everything starts defrosting. So that's the kind of information that you can pull off if you're using your onboard computer correctly. Driver behavior is one of the most fascinating things to watch remotely, is how people actually drive their trucks. And we employ 1,140 drivers, some of whom can actually drive. But the that you can actually break it down into some very definable issues. Is he speeding? That's obvious. Harsh braking. Now, through an accelerometer in the onboard computing device, you can pick up whether he's what the cornering loads are. So you can actually pick up the guy's hitting a roundabout and not stopping, and then wonder why he rolled over. And this has happened to us on more than one occasion. Excessive idling, fuel theft. So, for instance, in your onboard computer, there is on your dashboard or as an exception report, it'll tell you when somebody's siphoning fuel because it's going to drop incredibly fast. I've seen some unique methods of people stealing fuel. Excessive overtime. Drivers claiming a huge amount of overtime when they're not actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. You think they're on the road, they're not. They're parked off somewhere between Liwa and Giati, and they just decided to stop and have a rest for 5 hours. But you don't know that if you haven't got tracking. Time behind the wheel in terms of safety, we touched on safety earlier, and I know it's been a common theme throughout the conference, is how long is our driver spending behind the wheel, and is that actually safe? Should he be allowed to drive for as long as he has? Now, the whole thing boils down to cost. In terms of using technology, this type of technology, it boils down to, let's break down the elements of what our costs to run our vehicle actually are, our truck. So, by monitoring and controlling things like rocket control now, in terms of fuel consumption, tires, maintenance, traffic fines, the depreciation of the vehicle through the way that it's used, driver's salaries and overtime, accidents, downtime. Now, downtime is one of the things that we really don't often, we think about it, but what we do, we tend to chuck more trucks at the problem instead of figuring out why our trucks are off the road for so long. So, the opposite of downtime is uptime. So, what percentage of the time are our trucks actually down, and why are they down? What's the reason that our trucks are down? Is it because it's taken ages for us to load or offload wherever we get to, because we've got a very large supermarket chain that dictates where we are actually going to park and how long we're going to park there for? Or is it because our service supplier, because we've decided to have an in-house workshop, takes too long to turn the vehicles around? And the whole thing can be distilled down into a cost per kilometre. How much does it cost to run my truck over an amount of kilometres? Will give you an amount per kilometre, and that is the cost of running your vehicle. In terms of having a connected fleet, the main outcome of having something in the cab of the vehicle which tells you where it is and talks to you when the truck's talking to you is to say, I'm now going to take, this is the final part of the whole thing, is I'm now going to take control of my fleet. And how do we do that? The first thing is we have to say, what is our fleet policy? What are we going to buy? When are we going to buy it? And how are we going to buy it? So, what are we going to buy? We're going to buy an MAN, a Mercedes-Benz, a Scania, or a Hemi. When are we going to buy it? In other words, what's our replacement policy? How long are we going to keep our vehicles for? In this country, many people like what we call the graveyard policy, which is to keep the vehicle until the wheels fall off. The reality is that in terms of replacement policy, there's actually an old fleet management diagram which I've got kind of brained and embroiled in my brain, which says that as your depreciation curve, as the vehicle starts to would be worth less, and the maintenance curve goes up, at that point where you start to spend the most in the vehicle's life, and the time when the vehicle depreciation drops the fastest is when you should sell the vehicle. Tire selection. I'm a huge fan of Michelin. There's my Michelin man. Well, oh, there you go. Now, our onboard computer can tell us, through all of the things we've been talking about, which the right tyres are to use, because we know how the truck's being used and what the kilometres are that we're getting on. As a matter of interest, we've also got a tyre pressure management system which relays real-time all 16 tyres or 18 tyres, however many tyres you've got on your vehicle, or 6 on your truck, what the tire pressure is real time on each tire. So driver selection, accident reduction, reports that make sense, downtime reduction, geofencing. Now geofencing, just to quickly touch on that, when I spoke about your truck going to Saudi and you don't know about it, or it shouldn't be going there, or it shouldn't be, the guy should actually be following a specific road before he gets to the border and into that enormous mushkila they call the border control in Saudi. Where is he actually going? Now, through having this type of control, you can actually get your truck to tell you that your driver has gone off the road by more than 2 meters. You know that he's actually pulled off the road, an alarm goes off and says to you, my driver's off the road. He's not where he's supposed to be. And you can then make the call. You can either disable the truck, stop him from restarting it, or you can, if he doesn't react, or you can send somebody to find out what's going on if he doesn't answer his call. Now, the whole point is to use technology to measure by exception, not to sit and stare at the screen at 300 reports and think, wow, there are all my vehicles and this guy's doing this and this guy's doing that. The point is to use it as intelligently as we can the technology we've got. So, in closing, getting our trucks to talk to us and talking back to them, what telematics system should I choose? If I may advise, you want something, and I've been in the industry for some time and I've seen some very interesting black boxes put in trucks that melted after a couple of months, literally melted, the plastic just totally. So we went through 5 different suppliers before we found one that we were happy with. So simple to use, it's fast. I spoke about 30 minutes to get one single point. Cloud computing and software as a service has completely revolutionized that now, so that you can get multiple points in real time. You can actually see your vehicle moving. It needs to be quick and it needs to be usable. Usable reports, things that make sense. In other words, getting a document or a screenshot that actually tells you something about your vehicle and how it's being used, not just a bunch of jargon. A responsive supplier, somebody who's going to listen to what you're going to say, understand your business, and will react accordingly. Somebody will actually answer the phone. Upgradable, over the air, without anybody having to actually go and touch the truck. Contactable references in the UAE. I can't highlight this enough. Because of the unique circumstances so many of you have spoken of, heard to speak about today in this country, we have suppliers coming into this country who think that they can potentially make an impact on the market. And I think we've all had this scenario of had a situation where we've had a supplier come, give us a solution, and the next thing you look and there's absolutely no backup whatsoever. And it happens in many different areas, unfortunately, especially in technology. So find somebody that's actually running with a OBC, vehicle tracking solution, VTS, on your computer, and they've got contactable references and are running large fleets with that equipment in this country. Also find out if there are any hidden costs. What are you being charged? Are you being charged up front for a piece of equipment and then have to pay a monthly subscription? Or do you just pay a fixed monthly amount and everything's covered in that? Our particular model, just a matter of interest, is we charge a fixed monthly amount. There's no installation fee. We don't pay for the hardware at all. It's hardware and software as a service, and we just charge monthly for it. Just a quick case study of how onboard computers and telematics can change scenarios. We signed up a customer in Dubai 18 months ago. They had 200 trucks, FMCG industry, frozen food. They outsourced to us. We run in excess of 10,000 vehicles in the UAE, and of which 3,500 are medium commercial and heavy commercial. And we reduced the fleet to 150 in 6 months. Reducing the fleet by 50 gave us the ability to increase our tonnage by 3 tons of frozen product a day. Our OTIF, or on-time in-full delivery, went from, our customer doesn't want to tell us what his percentage was before, we think it's around 65 to 70%, but our OTIF is on-time in-full deliveries went to 95%, and the returns were reduced by 75%. And the only way that we could possibly do this was to know how many times the doors were opening, how many times, how many drops were being done, where the trucks are. So we're speaking in past tense, so we still have the contract. Whether the chiller's on or off, what the temperature in the actual cabin of the chiller is, not just taking the temperature sensor off the chiller itself, because that gives you a false reading. That's not what's happening at the back of the truck. So through the connected computer, through the truck that talks to us, we've been able to achieve these things. So in closing, I'd really like to encourage those of you that are in the fleet business, and those of you that design trucks or sell trucks or are involved in any way in the truck aftermarket or running trucks, to consider having telematics black box in your fleet. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. I don't want to take too much time if that's okay, so we can stay on the schedule. But we'll take one or two questions if anyone has a question here. Get a microphone, please.
I just have an observation. You were speaking about the telematics and the measures taken. You said you are measuring the cost per kilometer.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
In the commercial vehicle space, don't you think cost per ton per kilometer makes more relevance?
Depends what, no, not at all. It depends what you're delivering. But in terms of the real cost of owning a vehicle, it's not per ton. That's the cost of moving the goods. I'm talking about the cost of running, maintaining, and owning a vehicle.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is, essentially all of us are in the transport business.
Sorry?
Fleet operators, whoever is having fleets,
Yes.
they are essentially in the transport business, transportation of goods.
Yes.
So when they have to say offer a product, offer a service to any customer, maybe FMCG, maybe heavy goods, industrial machinery, ultimately it all boils down to the cost per ton per kilometer, right?
No. Yes, in terms of bulk goods, I would agree with you. In terms of FMCG, absolutely not. Because of the fact that you're dealing with very different types of products. What onboard computer enables you to do is to take control, and the measure of control is how much it's costing you per kilometer to run. Your cost,
Irrespective of the tonnage.
irrespective of the tonnage is irrelevant. Because your cost of ownership, not what you're earning. What you're earning is based perhaps on the way that you quote, which is I'm going to move X number of tons. But in reality, it's what it costs you per kilometer to run. That's your real cost. That's your real KPI or manage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take one more question. Okay, John, is there a microphone handy?
Yeah. Hi. I'm from India, and what I want to understand over here is what is the resistance that you see to telematics over here with the fleet operators? Because back in India, while yes, everybody understands, as in people who understand telematics know the value of it, but
Sure.
the fleet operators don't understand the value.
You're absolutely right.
And is that the same case over here, or how does it work in the Middle East?
You're very right. And what we've had to do is to educate people or educate fleets on how telematics makes their cost more visible. And some of the resistance that we found in the market is people don't want to pay up front for a box. So what we've said is we're not going to use that model at all. We just charge a monthly subscription. Everything's covered in that. Any software solutions or any hardware upgrades for 3 years are covered in our monthly cost, which is fixed. So that's the way we've addressed that issue. The major issue has been cost. So what we've done is say, we're not going to charge you 5,000 dirhams up front for a black box and then charge you on top of that. We'll just charge you one flat fee per month. And the cost is always the major issue. The fact that we're probably charging 80 or 90 dirhams a month for the software, including the hardware, is absolutely nothing when you consider it's probably costing people 8,000 to 10,000 dirhams a month to run a truck.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul. Thank you very much for the presentation. while Paul was speaking, I have to say, I happen to recall an article I read a few days ago, and you probably know one as well, about autonomous commercial vehicles being tested in the United States. Not to mention passenger cars, autonomous vehicle passenger cars in the United Kingdom being tested. And wow, I think that's really scary. So maybe that's the next part about telematics way into the future. Thanks very much, Paul.